Hey everyone!
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Welcome back to Sermon Break.
Yep, welcome back.
It was a great message. Tauren Wells was in the house.
So good. It was such a privilege. Also, put it in the chat, who didn't know that Pastor Tauren was going to get behind the pulpit? Usually he leads us in worship.
I know.
So him being behind the pulpit was an extra special treat.
But I remember when Pastor said, when he came to sing, he said, okay, next time you're here, Tauren, we're going to have you preaching. And I think he thought it was joking, but no, look at God. It came to pass. It came to pass. But it was such a treat hearing from him.
Yes.
I love I love so many of his songs. So it was really cool to hear that side of him. And the message that he preached, it was fire.
So good. So good.
I love the church.
Yes, I still love the church. It was an incredible sermon. Also, put it in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. What are you eating for lunch? I see a lot of people have joined us. Wonder, Tanya, Carrie. We have Pastor Stephen, Akash, Nadine, Miriam in the chat. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Welcome, welcome. We're so excited to dive a little bit deeper into this message and talk about how we can make it so practical. I want to start off by talking about what is your earliest memory of the church. Tauren was talking about when he was 9 years old, his dad took him to get a brand new outfit, and then they came in, they slid into the pews, and the way that Tauren just drew you into that story was so good. I could literally feel myself being like him, going to JCPenney, trying on the clothes as a kid and walking in with his dad. It was so cool. So what is your earliest memory of going to church? Put it in the chat right now. What is yours?
I think mine actually doesn't have to do with being in the physical church building, but it is still my earliest memory of church. And it was when we used to do Friday night Bible studies. Well, I didn't do them, my family did them. And we would always go to this family's house. It was Karen and Tom, and they hosted us, and they'd always have like fresh cinnamon buns, and
so nice.
Everyone would bring food. But every single Friday night we would go there, and I would always fall asleep on the couch. If my mom's here, she can be a testament to that. But yeah, I would always fall asleep on the couch. But just being there and being in the presence of other believers, that was my earliest memory of like anything church related. So
okay.
I think I was probably about like 2 or 3 when we started going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. For me, my family, we would go to a Finnish church. So I remember sitting in the pews and not knowing anything that they were saying because my mom and grandma both speak Finnish. But I remember getting dressed up, wearing little white shoes. I have a picture of me in this dress. And I remember sitting and all the old Bibles that were in the pews at the back and holding them. But I was really little when we started doing that. It was great. I still have really fond memories of that church.
So my question is, and I actually see some of you putting in the chat, seeing those Bible stories in felt on the walls of school is what Carrie said.
Oh, nice.
I remember that too. I remember I grew up in an old Baptist church, and our Sunday school did not look like E-Kids, that is for sure.
Yes, definitely.
So we definitely had like felt boards and felt Bible characters. Tanya said, I remember a little girl asked me to be her friend in Sunday school. I told her no, and to this day I get so sad about that, and I pray for her. Oh, that's so sad. Such a sad story. So my question is, in terms of elevation, Pastor Tauren was talking about how he still loves the church and his first memory of falling in love with the church. And so I want to know, when was the first moment you really fell in love with elevation? Was it a sermon that you heard? Was it a song? Was it an experience you had? A volunteer you interacted with? Put it in the chat, but what was yours?
I feel like there's so many different memories that I can think back on that has made me fall more in love with the church over years. I feel like you have that initial like reaction when you come into Elevation for the first time. For me, I remember coming in and hearing the worship, and then the message that Pastor preached was called, I'm blanking on what it's called right now. Brace yourself. Brace yourself. It was called Brace Yourself. And I remember leaving that day just completely just blown away. I gave my life to Christ that day, and I knew I had to come back. And I remember every single week listening to the free CD that they gave on the way out. I don't even have a CD player in my car anymore. That's how old it was.
Yes.
But I would listen to this CD, and there was 4 songs on it, just on repeat. And I just started to love the church so much, and I kept coming back every single Sunday. But I think I also fell in love with it all over again when we did Love Week, because just getting out to be in the community and seeing like people really being changed by the different things that we were able to do, the different events we put on, just the connections that were made. That just made me love the church even more. Like getting to be so practical was such a big highlight for me. That first Love Week I'll never forget. And some of the events we did were really hard. I was put in front of the stove to make these eggs, and
was that at Regen?
That was at Regen, and I did it wrong and I felt so bad. But it was such a great learning experience for me, and just my eyes were so opened. And again, like that was a really hard moment for me because this lady was really hard on me and I could not meet the way that she wanted me to make the eggs. But going to all the events all week long, it was so eye-opening, the difference that we could make. And I feel like it's just every event that I've done, I've learned skills I didn't know I had, picking out furniture at Furniture Bank, face painting kids, putting on worship nights at different places. It's so amazing what we get to do because of the church and the opportunities that the church gets.
Yeah. And you can join us for Love Week this year.
Yes.
July 22nd to 29th. We'll talk a bit more about it later, but I think Love Week is such an incredible opportunity for all of us to really get out there and serve and really put into practice what Pastor Tauren was talking about. I think my earliest memory, or my fondest memory when I fell in love with Elevation, was when I came to Elevation for the first time. We all have that first day story, but mine was when I walked in through the doors. Harrison and Andrea McCracken had greeted my mom and I, and it was when you still had to sign in because there was only like a small amount of people who could come to the church at the time. And so we were signing in, and Harrison was joking around with us how his first name was the same last name as my mom. And then when we came in to watch the worship experience, there was a video playing of a young girl being baptized by our youth leader. And watching that video completely changed my life and changed my heart. And so that first moment was when I was like, I really, really love Elevation and what they do and what they continue to grow in the youth specifically. So
I love that. It's so special. There's so many great stories on here too. Anthony, you said you came here with Christmas. Christmas is always such a special time of year, and getting to bring your whole family, that's definitely a memory. Nadine says feeling the community and my first ever e-group. Yeah, shout out to Nadine. That e-group was so strong, and the community that was formed has just gone. It's just like flowed through so many other e-groups too, so that's awesome. Cagney says stumbling on a sermon and just having so many wow moments. I know, Cagney, we could just list thousands of sermons with wow moments, honestly.
And Tanya was talking about how when she first came to Elevation, she got a postcard from Charlotte from eKids. And that was when she really fell in love with Elevation, which is so cool. What a cool moment.
What a cool moment. Emily, Code Orange Revival. Yes, that was such a big moment. That was years ago. We had church, I think it was 7 nights straight. And I was watching, I wasn't able to be a part of all of them, but I tuned in to 2 of them because they were online, or I was somehow able to watch them. And those messages were just, they were next level. That was such a really great season in our church too.
So good.
So good. All right, well, let's talk about the sermon. Let's put our favorite sermon takeaways in the chat, and let's watch this clip and talk about it. So check it out.
So Jesus went to church. The New Testament believers went to church. Paul started, planted, and pastored churches. A quarter of our Bible is God's instructions to churches. So what should that say about our instruction, our imperative? We can't reject the New Testament church's priorities and expect their power. We can't reject Jesus' priorities and expect his provision.
So good.
Love that clip.
Yeah.
Love that clip.
Yeah, that clip definitely was one of my highlights and one of my favorite moments from the sermon. I loved how he was talking about the early church and the early church's priorities. And I wanted to take a few minutes to just talk about what the early church's priorities really were, because when he was saying that, I kept thinking about, well, what was it that God had instructed and Jesus had instructed for the early church to do? And so I want you all to join me in Acts. We're going to go into Acts chapter 2. And in Acts chapter 2, we're going to start in verse 42. It says, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teachings and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. It says everyone was filled with awe, the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and everything in common, and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to everyone and anyone who had a need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved.
So good.
I want to jump back to Acts 2:42. And it's the first part of that scripture where it just talks about how what they devoted themselves to was the apostles' teaching. So like a sermon that we hear on a Sunday from pastor.
Yeah.
To fellowship, that's e-groups. To the breaking of bread, meeting up with your e-groups, meeting up with different people, and to prayer. And those were the things that they really devoted themselves to. And I think that that's something when Pastor Tauren was saying, like, we neglect or we forget the early church's priorities, but we expect to get the power that they had. We hear about all the signs and wonders that were happening, how the Holy Spirit filled the upper room, how people were speaking in different languages, and all people from all nations were coming together. And a lot of times I think and even he was saying, we expect Jesus's provision, but we reject his priorities.
Yeah. It got me thinking about when I started coming to Elevation. And for me, I rededicated my life here at Elevation. But before this, I had never served at a church before. Me going to church was a big enough deal on its own. I never even thought that I could serve, or I never got that involved. I was very much like, oh, I'm with Jesus in my head. It's me and him all the way. But then there became a time in my life where that wasn't enough for me. And I think that was what really pulled me back home to even find Elevation, because I thought to myself, I need community. I feel like this connection with God isn't working. I need more. And then I got plugged into the church, and I started coming to the church consistently. And then it was a couple of my friends actually really encouraged me to start volunteering. And I was very skeptical at first. Stephen, my husband, remembers very well. We weren't married at the time. I was really torn. I didn't know where I'd fit. I didn't know how to use my gifts. And I jumped into serving at eKids. And again, it was a hard road for me. I was pretty shy. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if I was meeting people's expectations. But I remember the more and more that I did it, and the more that I served and showed up every single week, even on the weeks that it was hard to show up because it was an early call time, I was so filled up, and I could see myself transforming, because it wasn't just the sermons that were filling me up. The community was filling me up. Being able to actually help people was filling me up. Being able to just pray with people and bring new families into eKids. Like, I had no idea. And I was sad that I'd missed out on so many years of growth and just feeling closer to God. And it all happened through volunteering. So if you're not volunteering, shout out volunteering, because there's so much that happens with watching the sermon and the messages, but when you actually get involved in the miracles and are actually doing something and putting your gifts to work, God transforms you even more.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I know a lot of our e-group leaders are on here right now with us, and I'm sure that they could even share moments where they've really felt like God has, their soul, Pastor Tauren was saying, like, when your soul aligns with a gift that God's given you, and the way that you're able to serve the Lord with that gift. It's once it all comes together, you have this like aha moment. And I know that e-group leading, even for me, has done that.
Right. There's so many moments. I loved when he said that too. Somebody put it in the chat too, how God really uses the church to connect us to a purpose, and that when we can use our gifts, that's where so much fulfillment comes. So you're talking about e-group leading. I think for me, definitely serving in eKids at that time, I was a teacher. So I got to use my gift in a different way. I wasn't directly impacting the kids, but I was able to direct the parents, and I was able to kind of get a big overview of the whole eKids ministry, which was awesome. So shout out Charlotte Fishback for teaching me so much at that time and taking me under her wing. And I don't know, there's been so many moments even in my life. I remember when I was just even starting my walk with Christ, bringing people to Jesus and being able to pray over them. I definitely felt like God was allowing me to work in my gifts, and that really solidified that I wanted to be a part of the church and to just be ministering in that way.
Yeah, I think that another moment for me that where I felt like my soul and my gift and the way I was able to serve the Lord really came together. Well, we were talking earlier, there's so many moments, but I think one of them definitely is with our e-group leader advances.
Yes.
When all of our e-group leaders come together, and we had the opportunity recently to anoint their hands with oil and prepare them for the season ahead, that moment I just felt like, okay, God, this is exactly what you want me to be doing. This is exactly where I'm meant to be. I felt like the gifts that he had given me and that he had prepared me, the way he had prepared me was finally coming into alignment with all that he had in store for me. So
that's so good. Cagney says it's a scary thing to step out. Cagney, I was just like you. I was super scared. I didn't think that I was equipped. I didn't think I had the time or the strength to even do it. I didn't think I was what they were looking for. But I feel like I've learned over the years that when you are feeling afraid, sometimes you just have to move it in anyways and believe that God's really going to bless it, and believe that even though you're scared, there's so much goodness on the other side. So I'm with you, but I would encourage you, if you feel like that's something God's putting on your heart, don't let the fear hold you back, because you don't know what you could be missing. So Nadine says there's E101 this Sunday. E101 is just where we let everybody know about all the different opportunities there are to serve. So shout out to Nadine and Chanel, who are doing our E101 here, and we'll give you all the information about how you can get involved in that. But I also love when he said, do you know what creates the good music? The tension. So even Cagney, going back to the fear thing, the tension is where you find the purpose. And when you can break through, when you can go through that tension, that's where everything comes alive. So that was another great point with the guitar string. I never even thought about how there has to be tension. It has to be connected to the body and the head for it to work and play beautiful music. I don't think I'm ever going to forget that analogy. I'm not going to look at guitars the same.
I will not look at guitars the same. And Pastor Tauren was challenging us. He said a lot of times people go through or are in church and they see something happen and then they think about the problem, but he was challenging us to really look at how could we be the solution. And so my challenge for you all this week is, how can you be the solution? If you see a problem, if you see an area that's lacking, where can you step in? Where can you fill that gap? I had Matt White, our production director, one time. I was sharing a tension that I felt with him, and he said, well, maybe you are the solution. Like, maybe this is the reason why you're here and in this place. And so I would really, really challenge you this week as you go through the week, if you're thinking about problems, even in your workplace, when you see problems come up, how can you be the solution to that problem that you see?
Right, that's so good, it's so helpful. It just applies to every area of our life, right? There's so many things that come up, and if you see it, God could be planting you there so that you can be the solution and be the one that steps in and makes the difference. So good. So here, very practically, if you want to get involved more at the church, if you want to sign up for E101, here's the link. We're having one this Sunday starting at 8 a.m. You don't have to commit for life or anything like that. Just come out, check it out, find out more about what Elevation is about and all the different opportunities that there are.
It's going to be great. And we have worship team auditions coming up. I know a lot of people have been asking about this. The time is now.
The time is now.
The time is now. So if you go to the link below, you'll be able to see where you can sign up and start the process for worship team auditions.
And we are launching a second campus. So we're definitely going to need more people joining the worship team to make this all happen. But there's also lots of opportunities to join our East launch team. So we're launching in the east side of the city at 300 Water Street. We're definitely looking for volunteers in all areas out there, not just the worship team. So you can sign up there to get more involved. And Love Week. I talked about at the beginning, that was where I fell in love with the church even more. July 22nd to 29th, we're going across the city. We're going to be serving at 60 events, and we're so excited. We're going to be building playgrounds, serving meals. We're going to be packing hygiene kits, packing backpacks for back to school. So sign up now. You're not going to want to miss it.
And if you don't know how to sign up, it's super simple. We have this little video here. You just go to elevationoutreach.org. Once you're on the site, you can click Learn More. From there, you can go ahead and see all the events that we have to offer across all of our campuses. But if you specifically want to check out what we have here going on in the GTA, you can filter for Toronto. So once you filter for Toronto, you'll be able to find all the events that fit your schedule, your interests. You can find family-friendly events. You'll see all 60 events for Love Week are right there. So make sure you head on over to elevationoutreach.org and get signed up.
Get signed up. It's going to be the best week of the year. But thanks for joining us here this week. I encourage you, be the solution this week. Remember that the tension is there for a reason, and it's going to allow you to just move into your purpose even more. So we're grateful for all of you, the community. We love our church.
Yes.
We're so grateful for all our volunteers, and just to be even on here with you every week. It's not something we take lightly. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.